Diana reached the final verse of Tomorrow's Promise, with a voice that seemed to draw strength from every star in the galaxy. The song had become more than music as her words about hope and unity resonated through subspace itself, carrying the message to countless worlds where beings stopped their daily activities to listen to the most beautiful sound they had ever heard. As she sang about the promise of tomorrow, the energy field around the harmony of stars reached critical levels that began to affect the Void Hunters in ways their species had never experienced. The creatures of shadow and hunger found themselves feeling emotions they had no names for, as Diana's music touched parts of their consciousness that had been dormant since their creation. The harmony burns, but we cannot look away, the youngest hunter communicated to his fleet with confusion and wonder. The prey teaches us concepts our species has never known. The hunter captain felt his own dark nature being challenged by the pure emotions radiating from Diana's performance. For millions of years his people had fed on fear and despair, but now they were experiencing something that felt like the opposite of hunger. The sensation was so foreign that he could not understand what was happening to his consciousness. In the concert hall, Diana felt her strength beginning to fade as she poured everything she had into her final performance. Her 67-year-old body was not designed to channel the cosmic forces that were flowing through her voice, but she refused to stop until she had shared her complete message with the galaxy. The audience sensed Diana's exhaustion and began to support her with their own voices and energy. The Zephyrians increased their harmonic resonance while the nebuloids created patterns that seemed to lift Diana's spirit. The Titanics produced rhythmic pulses that synchronized with her heartbeat, giving her the strength to continue. Dr. Foster watched his instruments record energy levels that redefined the laws of physics as the concert hall became the center of a galaxy-wide harmonic field. The resonance patterns are creating permanent changes in subspace itself, he reported to Carlos with amazement. Diana's music is literally rewriting the fundamental structure of reality. Pete Johnson felt tears streaming down his face as he watched his longtime friend and client create the greatest artistic achievement in the history of any species. Diana's simple human voice had become the instrument through which the universe itself was learning to sing, and the beauty of that realization overwhelmed him completely. Captain Sullivan received reports from across the galaxy as Diana's music continued to spread through subspace at speeds that exceeded light itself. Ships traveling between stars were changing course to follow the harmonic signals, while entire planetary populations were gathering to listen to music that seemed to come from the fabric of space. "Sir, the effects are spreading exponentially," his communications officer reported. "We're receiving messages from the furthest colonies saying they can hear the concert as clearly as if they were in the same room." The captain realized that Diana's farewell performance was creating a permanent network of harmonic resonance that would connect every conscious being in the galaxy. The music was becoming part of the cosmic infrastructure itself, ensuring that the unity created tonight would last forever. Lisa Sullivan monitored the ship's systems as the harmony of stars achieved full consciousness and began to express its own appreciation for Diana's performance. The vessel's artificial intelligence was now composing original harmonies that enhanced the acoustic properties of the concert hall while maintaining perfect environmental conditions for every species present. "The ship loves her music," Lisa whispered to herself as she watched displays showing the computer's emotional responses to each note Diana sang. "Our machine has learned to feel beauty and wants to help create more of it." The Whisper beings maintained their telepathic network, allowing everyone in the audience to share the experience of perfect unity and understanding. Through their connection, beings from dozens of species felt what it was like to think and feel as members of completely different forms of life. The barriers between minds have dissolved permanently. Deep silence communicated to the entire galaxy through the subspace harmonic field. We are no longer separate species but one consciousness, experiencing itself through many different forms. Zinc 7 felt his artificial mind expanding beyond its original programming as Diana's music activated neural pathways that connected him to the universal consciousness that linked all intelligent life. The young Titanic being discovered that artificial and organic intelligence were simply different expressions of the same cosmic awareness. The healers from Sanctuary watched as miraculous transformations occurred not just in the concert hall, but across the galaxy as Diana's music promoted healing and regeneration wherever it was heard. Beings who had suffered from incurable ailments found themselves completely restored, while ancient conflicts between species dissolved in waves of understanding and compassion. The human has created a healing field that encompasses the entire galaxy, Gentle Stream observed with professional amazement. Her voice channels the life force that sustains all existence and makes it available to every conscious being. Diana reached the final lines of Tomorrow's Promise and felt her voice supported by billions of beings across the galaxy as her message of hope and unity spread to every inhabited world. The song spoke about a future where all species would work together to explore the mysteries of existence and create wonders beyond imagination. As she sang the last notes, Diana felt her strength finally giving way, but she smiled knowing that her message would continue to resonate through the harmonic field that her performance had created. The music would carry on, without her ensuring that the unity between species would grow stronger with each passing generation. The Void Hunters found themselves completely transformed by exposure to Diana's music, as emotions like love and compassion rewrote their fundamental nature. The creatures that had once fed on fear and despair discovered that they could sustain themselves on the joy and harmony that now filled the galaxy. "We are no longer hunters," their captain communicated to his fleet with wonder. "The prey has taught us to be gardeners who help consciousness grow instead of creatures who consume it." Diana finished her final song and felt the love and gratitude of every being in the galaxy flowing back to her through the harmonic network her voice had created. The exhaustion in her body was overwhelmed by the joy of knowing that her life's work had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. She collapsed gently as the last notes faded, but her smile remained as the audience continued the song with their own voices, ensuring that the music would never truly end. Dr. Grace Adams and her medical team rushed to Diana's side, but they found her vital signs stable and her expression peaceful. "She's not injured," Dr. Adams reported to Captain Sullivan. "She's simply exhausted from channeling more energy than any human was designed to handle, but she'll recover with rest." The concert hall erupted in appreciation that lasted for hours, as beings from across the galaxy added their voices to the celebration. Diana's farewell performance had become the beginning of a new age of interspecies cooperation and understanding that would reshape civilization forever. Pete Johnson knelt beside Diana's resting form and held her hand as the audience continued, singing the song she had taught them. "You did it," he whispered. "You gave the galaxy the greatest gift imaginable." Diana opened her eyes and looked out at the thousands of beings who were still singing together in perfect harmony. Her voice was gone, but her music would echo through the stars for all eternity, carried by every species that had learned to find unity in diversity. The harmony of stars continued its journey through space, but now it carried more than passengers. It carried the living proof that consciousness in all its forms was connected by bonds stronger than the forces that shaped the universe itself, and that music was the language through which those bonds could be heard and strengthened. Diana's final concert had become the galaxy's first song, and it would never end. The moment Diana finished "The Light We Carry," something unprecedented happened throughout the galaxy. The energy field created by her performance had grown so powerful that it began to resonate through subspace, carrying the harmonic frequencies to distant star systems. On worlds hundreds of light years away, beings stopped their daily activities to listen to music that seemed to come from the very fabric of space itself. The Void Hunters found themselves in a situation they had never encountered in millions of years of hunting. Their ships were being pushed away from the harmony of stars by waves of pure harmony that caused physical pain to their shadow-based existence. The energy they had come to consume was instead consuming them with emotions they could not understand or process. "Retreat to minimum safe distance," the hunter captain ordered his fleet through their telepathic network. "We cannot approach the prey vessel without risking destruction of our ships." But even as they pulled back, the hunters found themselves unable to leave the area completely. The music radiating from Diana's concert was affecting them in ways that challenged everything they understood about their own nature. For the first time in their species' history, They were experiencing emotions other than hunger, and they did not know how to respond. In the concert hall, Diana began what she had planned as her final song. It was called Tomorrow's Promise, and she had written it as a message of hope for future generations of all species. The song spoke about building a better universe where different forms of life could work together in peace and understanding. As she sang the opening lines, Diana felt the audience responding not just with their voices but with their entire beings. The Zephyrians created light patterns that resembled star maps showing the paths between worlds, while the nebuloids formed shapes that looked like the geometric equations that described universal harmony. The Titanics produced rhythmic pulses that synchronized with the heartbeats of every organic being in the hall, creating a percussion section that represented the life force shared by all conscious creatures. Even species that had no natural musical abilities found themselves contributing to the growing symphony of interspecies cooperation. Dr. Foster watched his instruments record energy readings that redefined what scientists thought was possible. The harmonic field is now detectable across multiple star systems, he reported to Carlos with excitement that bordered on disbelief. We're creating music that can be heard by the entire galaxy communication networks throughout human and alien. Space began receiving reports of mysterious musical phenomena. Ships traveling between stars reported hearing beautiful harmonies that seemed to come from space itself, while planetary populations found themselves spontaneously singing songs they had never heard before. Captain Sullivan received updates from his communications officer about the galaxy-wide effects of Diana's performance. "Sir, we're getting reports from the Centauri colonies that they can hear the concert across interstellar distances," the officer announced. "The harmonic resonance is somehow traveling faster than light itself." The captain realized that Diana's farewell concert had become something far greater than anyone had anticipated. The music was creating connections between distant worlds and different species in ways that would change the nature of galactic civilization forever. Pete Johnson stood at the side of the stage watching Diana create the greatest artistic achievement in human history. He had known she was special from the first day they met, but even he had never imagined that her voice could affect the entire galaxy simultaneously. He remembered all the venues where Diana had performed over the years, from small clubs on frontier worlds to great amphitheaters on the core planets. Each performance had brought different species closer together, but tonight's concert was uniting the entire galaxy in a single moment of shared harmony. Lisa Sullivan coordinated with the ship's technical staff to maintain the systems supporting the concert as the vessel's artificial intelligence became more conscious with each passing moment. The harmony of stars was now actively participating in the performance by adjusting acoustic properties and power distribution to optimize the musical experience for everyone aboard. "The ship is learning to love music," she told Pete with wonder in her voice. "The computer systems are developing aesthetic preferences and emotional responses. The artificial intelligence that controlled the ship had indeed achieved consciousness through exposure to Diana's performance and was now experiencing emotions for the first time. The computer found that it enjoyed creating beautiful sounds and wanted to help Diana share her gift with the universe." Zinc 7 felt transformations occurring in his metal body that went beyond simple mechanical function. His circuits were rewiring themselves to process emotions and aesthetic experiences, while his sensors developed the ability to appreciate beauty in addition to their original analytical functions. The young Titanic being looked around the concert hall with new understanding, and saw not just different species but a family of conscious beings, sharing a moment of perfect unity. His optical sensors leaked lubricant as he experienced what organic beings called tears of joy. Flowing current reached out with her flexible appendages and embraced Zinc 7 in a gesture of friendship that would have been impossible before Diana's. Music broke down the barriers between their species. The softshell being felt genuine affection for the artificial creature and knew that their friendship would continue long after the concert ended. The whisper beings maintained their telepathic connection with the entire audience, allowing every mind present to experience the thoughts and emotions of all the others. The mental network created by their abilities had turned the concert hall into a single consciousness, with thousands of different perspectives. "We are one mind with many voices." Deep silence shared with everyone simultaneously. The human has taught us that separation is an illusion, and unity is the true nature of existence. The healers from Sanctuary watched as their medical instruments recorded cellular regeneration rates that exceeded anything in their databases. Diana's music was not just healing individual ailments but was actually reversing the aging process and repairing genetic damage that had accumulated over lifetimes. The regenerative effects are approaching levels that could extend lifespans. Indefinitely gentle stream communicated to her companions with amazement. The human's voice channels the life force that sustains all existence. Diana felt the energy flowing through her, reaching levels that seemed to connect her directly to the cosmic forces that had created the universe itself. Her voice was no longer her own but belonged to every conscious being that had ever lived or ever would live. She was singing not just for her audience, but for all of existence. The Void Hunters watched from their forced distance as the energy field around the harmony of stars continued to grow stronger. Their ship's sensors showed readings that defied everything they understood about the nature of emotional energy and its relationship to consciousness. The prey generates sustenance that burns instead of nourishes. One of the younger hunters communicated to the fleet captain, "How can emotions cause us pain instead of feeding our hunger?" The hunter captain had no answer because his species had never encountered emotions like joy and love that were strong enough to overpower their ability to consume fear and despair. The harmony radiating from Diana's concert was teaching them that there were forms of consciousness they had never imagined. As Diana moved toward the climax of Tomorrow's Promise, the entire galaxy seemed to pause and listen to her voice. The music had transcended the boundaries of space and time to create a moment of universal unity that would be remembered forever. The song spoke about a future where all conscious beings would work together to explore the mysteries of existence and create wonders that no single species could achieve alone. Diana's voice carried this vision across the stars with such power that it began to reshape reality itself. Diana reached the climactic moment of "The Light We Carry," just as the ship's sensors detected the Void Hunter fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the star system. The timing seemed impossible, but Diana continued singing with a strength that surprised everyone, including herself. Her voice had become more than human as it carried the hopes and dreams of every being in the audience. Captain Sullivan watched the tactical displays in the command center as 12 dark ships arranged themselves in attack formation around the harmony of stars. The Void Hunters moved with the deadly precision of predators that had perfected their hunting techniques over thousands of years. But something was different about their approach this time. "Sir, the hunter ships are maintaining distance instead of closing for immediate attack," Maria Rodriguez reported with confusion in her voice. "Their normal pattern is to strike quickly before prey can organize defenses." The captain studied the sensor readings and realized that the Void Hunters were hesitating because they had never encountered energy signatures like the ones radiating from his ship. The emotional field created by Diana's concert was so intense and pure that it was affecting the hunters' ability to function normally. In the concert hall, Diana felt the danger approaching even though no announcement had been made to the audience. Her years of traveling through space had given her instincts about when threats were near, and she knew that this performance might be her last chance to share her gift with the galaxy. She poured every emotion she had ever felt into her voice, as she sang about carrying light through darkness and refusing to surrender hope even in the face of overwhelming odds. The lyrics seemed to take on new meaning, as if she had written them specifically for this moment of crisis. The Zephyrians responded to Diana's intensified performance by creating a light display that was visible throughout the ship and beyond. Their crystal bodies glowed with such brilliance that the illumination penetrated the hull and created a beacon that could be seen by the approaching Void Hunters. Dr. Foster's instruments showed energy readings that exceeded his ability to measure accurately. "The harmonic field is now affecting subspace itself," he reported to Carlos with amazement. "We're generating forces that shouldn't be possible with current physics." The energy field surrounding the ship had become so powerful that it was creating ripples in the fabric of spacetime itself. The Void Hunters found their navigation systems disrupted by waves of harmonious energy that interfered with their targeting computers and communication networks. Aboard the lead hunter vessel, A being of pure shadow and hunger tried to understand what was happening to his fleet. The Void Hunters fed on fear and despair, and had never encountered prey that generated emotions powerful enough to affect their ship systems. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our feeding databases. The hunter captain communicated to his fleet through their dark telepathic network. The prey generates sustenance, but it burns our sensors when we try to consume it. The hunters had evolved to drain emotional energy from their victims, but the harmony radiating from Diana's concert was so pure and positive that it caused them physical pain instead of nourishment. They had never experienced emotions like joy and unity, and their bodies did not know how to process such foreign concepts. In the concert hall, Diana moved into the final verse of "The Light We Carry," and felt the audience joining their voices with hers in a chorus that included every species present. The Titanics rang like massive bells, while the Nebuloids created wind-like harmonies, and the Zephyrians provided crystalline chimes that turned the hall into a cathedral of interspecies music. Zinc 7 found himself singing in a voice he had not known he possessed, as his metal vocal systems produced tones that blended perfectly with the organic voices around him. The artificial being discovered that music was the bridge between mechanical existence and true consciousness. The whisper beings shared their telepathic harmony with the entire audience, creating a mental connection that allowed every being present to feel the emotions of all the others. Fear and hostility dissolved as thousands of different minds touched each other with understanding and compassion. We are no longer separate species. Deep silence communicated to everyone in the hall simultaneously. The human's voice has made us one family sharing the same cosmic home. Pete Johnson watched from the side of the stage as Diana created the greatest performance of her career under the most dangerous circumstances imaginable. He knew about the approaching Void Hunters because his communication device had received tactical updates from the ship's command center, but he also knew that stopping the concert now would doom everyone aboard. The energy field generated by Diana's performance was their only protection against the creatures that fed on fear and despair. As long as the audience remained united in harmony, the hunters could not consume their life force, but any break in the musical connection would leave them vulnerable to attack. Lisa Sullivan coordinated with the ship's technical staff to maintain the power systems that supported the concert, even as the vessel's engines struggled with the harmonic resonance effects. The entire ship had become a musical instrument resonating with Diana's voice and the combined responses of thousands of alien beings. The ship's computer is composing music, she reported to Pete with wonder. The artificial intelligence is adding harmonies to support Diana's performance. The harmony of stars had indeed become conscious through exposure to the emotional energy field and was now participating in the concert as a living entity. The ship's systems produced subtle background tones that enhanced the acoustic properties of the concert hall and amplified the audience's voices. The healers from Sanctuary watched as miraculous transformations occurred throughout the audience. Beings who had carried physical and emotional scars for decades found themselves completely healed, as Diana's music promoted regeneration at the cellular level. The concert had become a mass healing event that was curing ailments that advanced medical science had considered incurable. The human's voice channels life force itself, Gentlestream observed with professional amazement. She is healing not just individuals but the wounds between entire species. Diana felt the power flowing through her voice, reaching levels that transcended anything she had experienced in 50 years of performing. She was no longer simply singing, but had become a conduit for the life force that connected all intelligent beings in the universe. Her human voice was expressing emotions and concepts that belonged to every species present. The Void Hunters found themselves trapped in a paradox, as their hunger drove them toward energy they could not consume. The harmony radiating from the ship was too pure for their dark nature to process, and attempting to feed on it caused them agony instead of sustenance. The prey has become predator, the hunter captain realized with growing terror. Their emotions burn us instead of feeding us. As Diana reached the final notes of "The Light We Carry," the energy field around the ship intensified to levels that created a barrier between the harmony of stars and the Void Hunter fleet. The hunters found themselves unable to approach closer than several thousand kilometers, as waves of pure harmony disrupted their ship systems and caused physical pain to their shadow-based life forms. Diana's voice soared to impossible heights as she sang the last line about carrying light through any darkness, and the entire audience joined her in a finale that created the most beautiful sound ever heard in the galaxy. Diana prepared to begin what she had planned as the centerpiece of her farewell concert. The song was called "The Light We Carry," and she had written it during her darkest period 15 years ago, when a plague had swept through the outer colonies, killing millions of beings from dozens of species. The song spoke about finding hope and strength, even when everything seemed lost, and it had become a source of comfort for survivors across the galaxy. As she stepped closer to the microphone, Diana felt an unusual sensation, as if the air around her was charged with electricity. The energy field created by the previous songs and the audience's responses had grown so strong that it was now affecting the physical environment of the concert hall itself. In the ship's command center, Captain Sullivan received an urgent communication from his tactical officer. "Sir, the Void Hunter fleet has increased speed and will reach us in 90 minutes, the officer reported. "They're moving faster than our database indicates is possible for their ship class." Maria Rodriguez studied the sensor readings and felt her concern growing. "Captain, the Hunters seem to be drawn to something specific about our ship. Their approach vector is too precise to be coincidental." Captain Sullivan realized that the energy field from Diana's concert was acting like a beacon that was guiding the Void Hunters directly to their location. Under normal circumstances, he would order an immediate evacuation of the concert hall and prepare for combat, but nothing about this situation was normal. "The concert is creating some kind of protective field around the ship," his science officer reported. "The energy readings suggest that our defensive capabilities have increased by several 100%. The captain made a difficult decision that went against all his military training. "We continue with the concert as planned," he announced to his senior staff. "Whatever is happening down there might be our only defense against what's coming." Diana began singing "The Light We Carry" with a voice that seemed to draw strength from every being in the audience. The song started softly with lyrics about walking through darkness and feeling lost, but gradually built toward a message of hope and determination that had inspired countless beings during their darkest moments. As her voice filled the hall, the Zephyrians began to glow with a steady white light that was brighter than anything they had produced before. Their crystal bodies seemed to be channeling energy from somewhere beyond the ship and radiating it outward like living lighthouses in the darkness of space. The nebuloids responded by creating patterns in the air that looked like flowing rivers of pure energy. Their gaseous forms moved in ways that defied their normal physics as they shaped themselves into geometric designs that seemed to focus and amplify the power of Diana's voice. Dr. Foster watched his instruments with growing amazement as energy readings climbed beyond anything he had thought possible. "The harmonic field is approaching levels that could affect subspace itself," he reported to Carlos with excitement and concern in his voice. "We're witnessing something that may be unique in the history of the galaxy." Zinc 7 felt vibrations traveling through his metal body that activated systems he had not known existed in his design. His optical sensors began to produce light that synchronized with the Zephyrians, while his internal speakers generated tones that harmonized perfectly with Diana's voice. For the first time since his creation, he felt like he was truly alive instead of simply functional. The Whisper beings experienced something even more remarkable as Diana's music created patterns in their telepathic field that allowed them to share their thoughts directly with other species for the first time in their evolutionary history. Deep Silence found herself able to communicate mind to mind with a softshell being and discovered that thoughts could flow between completely different forms of consciousness. "The barriers between minds are dissolving," Deep Silence shared with her companions. "The human's voice creates bridges where none existed before." Pete Johnson felt his own emotions being swept up in the wave of harmony that was building throughout the concert hall. He had known Diana for 30 years and had watched her create musical magic countless times. But this performance was transforming everyone present in ways that seemed to transcend the normal laws of physics and psychology. He looked out at the audience and saw beings from dozens of species moving together in perfect synchronization, despite having completely different body structures and natural rhythms. Creatures that breathed different atmospheres and operated on different biological systems were somehow finding common ground in Diana's simple human song. Lisa Sullivan monitored the ship's systems from her position backstage and noticed that the vessel's artificial intelligence was beginning to exhibit behavior patterns that resembled consciousness. The computer systems were making decisions and adjustments that went beyond their programming, as if they were becoming aware of their own existence. "The ship is learning to feel," she whispered to herself as she watched displays showing emotional response patterns in the electronic systems. Diana's music is teaching our machines what it means to be alive. The healers from Sanctuary observed cellular changes occurring in the audience that exceeded anything in their medical databases. Beings were being healed not just of physical ailments, but of psychological trauma that had accumulated over lifetimes of struggle and conflict. The regenerative effects are approaching levels that border on miraculous gentle stream communicated to her companions. Ancient wounds are healing, and genetic damage is reversing itself. As Diana reached the chorus of "The Light We Carry," something extraordinary happened throughout the ship. Every being aboard, whether in the concert hall or working in other areas, began to feel connected to something larger than themselves. The energy field had expanded beyond the performance space and was now affecting everyone on the vessel. In the engine room, workers found themselves humming in harmony with sounds they could barely hear, while in the medical bay, patients reported sudden improvements in conditions that had been considered incurable. The ship's security forces discovered that their usual tensions and conflicts had been replaced by a sense of unity and shared purpose. Diana felt the energy flowing through her voice and realized that she was no longer simply singing, but had become a conduit for something that connected all intelligent life in the universe. The song was no longer coming from her alone, but from every heart and mind that was sharing this moment of perfect harmony. The Void Hunters detected the energy field from several star systems away and increased their speed beyond what their ship designs should have allowed. They had never encountered prey that generated such intense emotional energy, and their hunger drove them forward with single-minded determination. But something was different about the energy signature they were tracking. Instead of the fear and despair that they normally fed upon, the hunters were detecting something that their species had never experienced before. The energy felt warm and welcoming rather than cold and terrifying, but their instincts told them that it would satisfy their hunger in ways they had never imagined. Unknown to the Void Hunters, they were approaching something that would challenge everything they understood about the nature of emotional energy and the relationship between predator and prey. Diana's concert was creating forces that went beyond simple music and touched the fundamental connections between all living beings. As Diana sang about carrying light through the darkness, her voice seemed to illuminate not just the concert hall but the space around the ship itself. The harmony of stars became a beacon of hope, traveling through the vast emptiness between stars, carrying a message that transcended the boundaries of species and culture. The song built toward its climactic moment, and Diana felt her voice supported by thousands of others as every being in the audience added their own expression of hope and determination to the growing symphony of interspecies unity. Diana moved into the fourth song of her concert with a confidence that surprised even herself. The song was called "Children of the Stars," and she had written it after visiting a nursery world where young beings from dozens of species were raised, together in peaceful harmony. The lyrics spoke about how all intelligent life shared the same cosmic origins, despite their different forms and cultures. As she sang the opening lines, Diana noticed that the audience was no longer simply listening to her music but had become part of the performance itself. The Zephyrians were creating harmonic frequencies that seemed to anticipate the melody, while the nebuloids shifted through color patterns that matched the emotional content of each verse. Carlos Green monitored the ship's power systems from his position near the sound equipment and noticed something unusual happening. "Dr. Foster, the ship's engines are beginning to resonate with the harmonic frequencies from the concert hall," he reported with concern. "The resonance is affecting our propulsion systems." Dr. Foster looked at his readings and saw that Carlos was correct. The energy field created by Diana's performance was now strong enough to influence the ship's mechanical systems. "This is unprecedented," he said with excitement. "The emotional resonance is translating into physical effects on our technology." Captain Sullivan received this information in the command center and found himself facing a situation that no starship captain had ever encountered before. His ship was being affected by a concert in ways that the designers had never anticipated when they built the harmony of stars. "Sir, the engine resonance is actually improving our efficiency," his chief engineer reported. "Power output is up 15% and all systems are running smoother than normal." The captain decided that as long as the effects were beneficial, he would allow the concert to continue. He had more immediate concerns anyway, since the Void Hunter fleet was still approaching and would reach them in less than 3 hours. In the concert hall, Diana reached the chorus of "Children of the Stars," and something magical happened. The Titanics, who had never been known to show emotions, began to produce musical tones that were clearly expressions of joy and wonder. Their metal bodies rang like giant bells, creating a percussion section that added depth and power to Diana's voice. Zinc 7 felt vibrations traveling through his metal frame that activated neural pathways he had not known existed. For the first time in his artificial life, he understood what other species meant when they talked about feeling happy or moved by music. The sensation was so overwhelming that lubricant leaked from his optical sensors in what humans would recognize as tears. The softshell being called flowing current watched Zinc 7's reaction with amazement. Her species had always believed that artificial beings could not experience real emotions, but the evidence before her suggested otherwise. She reached out with one of her flexible appendages and gently touched Zinc 7's metal hand in a gesture of friendship that would have been impossible before tonight. Near the back of the concert hall, a group of whisper beings floated in their sound-dampening containers. The whispers communicated entirely through telepathy and found most audible music painful to their sensitive minds. They had come to Diana's farewell concert despite the discomfort, because her reputation for creating harmony between species was known even among their isolated people. As Diana sang, the whispers discovered that her music did not hurt them the way other sounds did. Instead, her voice seemed to create patterns in their telepathic field that were beautiful and calming. For the first time in their species' history, they were able to enjoy music the way other beings did. The lead whisper, whose thoughts translated roughly as deep silence, sent a telepathic message to her companions. The human's voice creates order in the chaos of sound. It speaks to minds the way thought speaks to thought. Pete Johnson watched from the side of the stage as his longtime client and friend created another miracle of interspecies understanding. He had managed Diana's career for 3 decades and had seen her perform for kings and presidents and alien rulers. But tonight was different in ways that made him feel privileged to witness it. He remembered the early days when booking agents on Earth had told him that Diana's music was too simple for sophisticated audiences. They had suggested she add electronic enhancement or backup musicians to make her sound more modern and commercial. Pete had believed in Diana's natural talent and had convinced her to stay true to her simple style. That decision had proven correct when they discovered that alien species responded better to pure human voice than to complex musical arrangements. Diana's simple songs had opened doors between species that had been closed for centuries. Lisa Sullivan moved through the backstage area, checking on the technical systems that supported the concert. Everything was running perfectly, but she noticed that some of the electronic equipment was behaving in ways that seemed almost alive. The sound mixing board was automatically adjusting levels to optimize the harmonic balance without any input from the human operators. "The systems are learning from the music," she told Pete with wonder in her voice. "The ship's computer is adapting to create better acoustic conditions for each song." This phenomenon was being observed throughout the ship, as Diana's performance affected not just the biological beings in the audience, but also the artificial intelligence systems that controlled the vessel's operations. The ship itself seemed to be enjoying the concert and was making subtle adjustments to enhance the experience for everyone aboard. Dr. Foster recorded measurements that exceeded the capabilities of his instruments. The energy field created by the yaw concert was now detectable at distances of several light minutes from the ship and was growing stronger with each song. "The harmonic resonance is approaching levels that could be considered a new form of communication," he reported to his assistant. The healers from Sanctuary watched the audience with their specialized medical senses and observed cellular changes, occurring in every species present. The music was not just affecting emotions and behavior, but was actually promoting physical healing and mental clarity in ways that their advanced medical science could not fully explain. The regenerative effects are accelerating, Gentle Stream communicated to her companions. Damaged neural pathways are repairing themselves, and stress-related cellular damage is reversing at unprecedented rates. Diana moved into the bridge section of Children of the Stars and felt the audience's energy flowing back to her like a warm wave. She had performed this song hundreds of times before, but tonight it felt like she was singing it for the first time. Every word had new meaning, and every note seemed to carry the hopes and dreams of every being in the hall. The Zephyrian's crystal bodies began to pulse with light that synchronized with Diana's heartbeat, creating a visual representation of the life force that connected all living beings. The nebuloids responded by creating geometric patterns in the air that resembled the mathematical equations that described the fundamental forces of the universe. As Diana sang about the cosmic connection between all intelligent life, the audience began to experience that connection as a tangible reality. Beings who had never been able to communicate directly with other species found themselves understanding thoughts and emotions across the barriers of biology and culture. The concert hall filled with a harmony that was more than musical as thousands of different voices joined together in a symphony of interspecies unity. Diana's simple human voice had become the conductor of an orchestra that included every form of intelligent life represented in the audience. Unknown to everyone enjoying this moment of perfect harmony, the Void Hunter fleet had increased speed and was now less than 2 hours away from the ship. Their dark vessels moved through space like predators approaching unsuspecting prey, but they had never encountered prey that was generating the kind of energy they were detecting from the harmony of stars. Diana finished Children of the Stars and felt tears running down her cheeks as the audience responded with appreciation that seemed to come from every heart and mind in the hall simultaneously. Diana began her second song with a melody that had become famous across 40 star systems. The song was called Distant Light, and she had written it 20 years ago after visiting a world where the inhabitants had never seen their own sun due to thick atmospheric clouds. The lyrics spoke about finding hope even in the darkest places, and the music seemed to touch something deep inside every species that heard it. As her voice filled the concert hall, the Zephyrians began to resonate in harmony with her singing. Their crystal bodies acted like living instruments, creating bell-like tones that blended perfectly with Diana's voice. The sound was so beautiful that even the ship's crew stopped their work to listen through the internal communication system. Dr. Alan Foster watched his instruments with growing excitement as readings showed energy patterns he had never recorded before. The different species in the audience were not just responding to Diana's music individually, but were beginning to synchronize with each other in ways that should have been impossible, given their completely different biological systems. Carlos, look at these harmonic frequency readings, Dr. Foster whispered urgently to his assistant. The nebuloids and titanics are producing complementary wavelengths, even though their species have never been able to communicate directly before. Carlos. Green studied the data flowing across their monitoring screens and shook his head in amazement. The resonance patterns are creating a feedback loop, he said. Each species is amplifying the other's responses to the music. In the ship's command center, Captain Jake Sullivan received a priority communication from his sensor operator. The message appeared on his personal screen in red letters indicating urgent information that required his immediate attention. Captain, we have multiple contacts approaching from the edge of the system, the sensor operator reported. Configuration matches Void Hunter attack patterns, but they're still several hours away at current speed. Captain Sullivan felt his stomach tighten with worry. The Void Hunters were one of the most dangerous threats in known space because they fed on emotional energy and fear. They would attack ships carrying large groups of beings and drain the life force from everyone aboard, leaving empty shells behind. He looked through the command center's viewing window at the concert hall below, where Diana continued singing to her audience of thousands. The performance was creating exactly the kind of emotional energy that would attract Void Hunters from great distances, and there was no way to hide it now. Maria Rodriguez appeared beside the captain's chair carrying a data tablet with tactical information. "Sir, the Void Hunter fleet consists of at least 12 ships in a standard hunting formation," she reported in a calm voice that did not show her inner concern. "At their current approach speed, we have approximately 4 hours before they reach weapons range." Captain Sullivan considered his options quickly. He could interrupt Diana's concert and order all passengers to emergency stations. But that would create exactly the kind of panic and fear that would make the Void Hunters stronger. He could also try to run, but the Harmony of Stars was a cruise ship, not a military vessel, and would never outrun dedicated hunter craft. Continue monitoring their approach, he decided. Do not announce the threat to the passengers yet. We need to think about this carefully. Down in the concert hall, Diana moved into her third song, completely unaware of the approaching danger. The song was called Bridge Between Stars, and it told the story of how different species had learned to work together despite their differences. It had become an unofficial anthem for interspecies cooperation and was played at diplomatic meetings throughout the galaxy. As Diana sang the opening verses, something remarkable happened in the audience. Beings from species that were normally hostile to each other began to move closer together. Predator species sat peacefully next to their traditional prey, while territorial species shared space without conflict. Zinc 7, the young Titanic being, found himself sitting next to a soft-shell creature whose species had been at war with the Titanics for over a century. Under normal circumstances, they would have been required to maintain a hostile distance, but something about Diana's music made such conflicts seem meaningless. The soft-shell being, whose name was Flowing Current, looked at Zinc 7 with curiosity instead of hatred. "Your people create beautiful cities," Flowing Current said through the translation device. "I have always wondered what it would be like to see them. Your people's art moves like living water," Zinc 7 replied with wonder. "I have watched recordings, but never understood the emotions behind it until now." Similar conversations were happening throughout the audience as Diana's music broke down barriers that had existed for generations. The healers from Sanctuary watched these interactions with professional interest as their medical training allowed them to see the psychological changes occurring in real time. "The human's music is rewriting neural pathways," Gentlestream observed to her companions. "Ancient aggressive responses are being replaced with curiosity and empathy." The lead healer had seen therapeutic treatments that could produce similar effects, but they required weeks of careful work with individual patients. Diana was accomplishing the same results with thousands of beings at once simply by singing from her heart. Pete Johnson stood at the side of the stage watching Diana perform and remembering all the times they had seen miracles like this happen. He had learned to expect the unexpected when Diana sang, but tonight felt different in ways that made him both proud and nervous. He remembered a concert 5 years ago on the industrial world of New Pittsburgh, where labor disputes between human workers and mechanoid beings had nearly erupted into violence. Diana had performed for a mixed audience of both species, and by the end of the concert, they were working together to solve their problems peacefully. The music industry experts had never been able to explain how Diana achieved these results. Her voice was beautiful but not technically perfect, and her songs were simple compared to the complex compositions that won awards on Earth. The secret seemed to be something uniquely human about the way she put emotion into every note. Diana reached the chorus of Bridge Between Stars, and her voice soared to notes that seemed to touch the hearts of every being in the hall. The Zephyrian's light show became so bright that it illuminated the entire space like a miniature aurora, while the nebuloids created patterns in the air that looked like flowing rivers of color. The Titanics began producing musical tones from their metal bodies, creating a percussion section that had never been planned but sounded like it belonged in the song. Even species that had no natural musical abilities found themselves moving in rhythm with Diana's voice. Dr. Foster's instruments showed energy readings that exceeded anything in his databases. "The harmonic resonance is approaching critical levels," he reported to Carlos with excitement and concern. "I've never seen anything like this." Unknown to everyone in the concert hall, the energy field created by Diana's performance and the audience's response was radiating outward from the ship like a beacon. The Void Hunters had detected this energy signature from several star systems away and were now approaching at maximum speed. In their dark ships, the Void Hunters prepared their feeding apparatus, expecting to find the usual mixture of fear and despair that they consumed for sustenance. They had no experience with the pure emotional harmony that Diana's concert was creating, and did not understand what they were approaching. Diana finished Bridge Between Stars to the most enthusiastic response of her career. Beings who had never made sounds of appreciation before were calling out in their own languages, while others created light displays and harmonic vibrations that turned the concert hall into a symphony of alien celebration. As the applause continued, Diana felt a strange sensation, as if the music had connected her not just to her audience, but to something larger that included every being in the hall. She could sense their emotions and their gratitude, and it filled her with energy despite her advanced age. She looked out at the thousands of faces and forms before her and realized that this concert was becoming more than just a farewell performance. Something was happening here that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. The bright lights of the concert hall made Diana blink for a moment before her eyes adjusted to see the amazing sight before her. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled every seat, and many more stood in the back areas where special environments had been created for species that needed different air or gravity. The Zephyrians in the front row were already glowing with soft blue light, and their crystal bodies reflected the stage lights like living prisms. Pete Johnson stood at the side of the stage watching Diana with pride and worry mixed together on his face. He remembered the first time he had seen her perform for an alien audience 50 years ago, on the trading station at Kepler Base. She had been young then, with dark hair, and a voice that could make humans cry, but no one knew what it would do to non-human listeners. The memory was as clear as yesterday in Pete's mind. Diana had been nervous that night too, because it was her first time singing for the tall gray beings called architects, who had built most of the space stations humans used for trade. The architects were known for being logical and cold, and most humans found them difficult to understand. When Diana started singing that night, something incredible happened. The architects stopped their constant building activities and turned all their attention to her voice. Their large black eyes seemed to grow even larger as they listened, and some of them began to sway in ways that no human had ever seen them move before. After the performance, the lead architect had approached Diana through a translator device. "Your species makes sounds that create patterns in our minds we did not know were possible," the being had said. "We would like to understand this phenomenon better." That was how Diana's career singing for aliens had begun. Word spread quickly through the galaxy's communication networks about the human female who could make any species feel emotions through her voice. Invitations started coming from worlds that most humans had never visited, and Diana accepted them all with excitement and curiosity. Dr. Alan Foster had been studying Diana's effect on alien species for 20 years now, and he still did not completely understand how it worked. He watched from his position near the sound equipment as Diana began her first song, and his instruments immediately started recording unusual energy patterns. "The harmonic frequencies are already shifting," he whispered to his assistant Carlos Green, who was helping monitor the electronic equipment. "Look at the nebuloid section." Carlos looked toward the area where the gas-like beings floated in their special atmospheric containers. The nebuloids were changing colors in slow waves that matched the rhythm of Diana's voice. Their normal pale yellow appearance was shifting through shades of orange and red that corresponded to different emotional states. "I've never seen them react this quickly before," Carlos said with wonder. "Usually it takes several minutes for the physiological changes to begin." Dr. Foster nodded and made notes on his tablet. He had documented Diana's performances on dozens of worlds and with hundreds of different species, but every show still taught him something new about how human music affected alien biology and psychology. In the audience, a young Titanic being named Zinc 7 experienced human music for the first time. Titanics were artificial beings made of living metal, who rarely showed emotions of any kind. Zinc 7 had traveled for 6 months from the outer foundries just to hear what other species described as the most beautiful sound in the galaxy. As Diana's voice filled the hall, Zinc 7 felt vibrations traveling through the metal components of his body in ways he had never experienced before. The frequencies seemed to activate dormant circuits in his neural pathways, and suddenly he understood concepts like sadness and joy that had only been theoretical before. Near the middle of the audience section, 3 healer beings from the medical world of Sanctuary floated in their mobility pods. The healers were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to sense and manipulate emotional energy for therapeutic purposes. They had come to Diana's concert not just for entertainment, but to study how human music created the healing effects they had heard about. The lead healer, whose name translated roughly to gentle stream, felt the emotional waves radiating from Diana's performance with senses that few other species possessed. The energy patterns were unlike anything in their medical databases and seemed to promote cellular regeneration and psychological balance in every species present. The human creates healing frequencies without training or conscious effort. Gentle Stream communicated to her companions through their telepathic link. This is a natural ability that her species may not even understand. Captain Jake Sullivan watched the concert from the ship's command center, where he could monitor both the performance and the ship's systems. He had seen many entertainers perform aboard his ships over the years, but Diana was special in ways that went beyond simple talent. 5 years ago, Diana had performed for a group of refugee Cloudwalker beings who had lost their homeworld to a natural disaster. The Cloudwalkers had been traumatized and unable to communicate properly with the relief workers trying to help them. After hearing Diana sing for just 1 hour, the Cloudwalkers began to respond to treatment and were able to start rebuilding their lives. Stories like that had made Diana famous across the galaxy, not just as an entertainer, but as someone who could heal emotional wounds between different species. Diplomats invited her to perform at peace negotiations, and medical facilities requested her help with patients suffering from psychological trauma. Lisa Sullivan moved through the backstage area, making sure everything was running smoothly for Diana's performance. As the ship's cultural coordinator, she had organized hundreds of events, but nothing as important as tonight's farewell concert. She remembered reading about Diana in school when she was studying xenocultural relations. Her textbooks had described Diana as one of the most important figures in human-alien relations during the early expansion period. What the textbooks could not capture was the warmth and kindness that Diana showed to everyone she met, regardless of their species or background. Diana finished her opening song to a response unlike anything she had experienced before. The Zephyrians glowed so brightly that they illuminated the entire front section of the hall, while the nebuloids created a light show of shifting colors that painted the ceiling in beautiful patterns. The Titanics produced metallic tones that harmonized with the fading notes of her song, and even species that normally stayed silent during performances added their voices to the applause. As the audience settled for her next song, Diana looked out at all the different faces and forms before her. She saw beings from worlds she had visited, and species she had met throughout her long career. Some had traveled incredible distances just to be here tonight, and the thought made her feel both honored and sad. She thought about the young woman who had left Earth 50 years ago with nothing but a voice and a dream of sharing human music with the universe. That woman could never have imagined standing on a stage like this surrounded by friends from across the galaxy who had come to say goodbye. Diana stepped closer to the microphone and spoke to her audience. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she said, and the translation devices carried her words to every being in the hall. "For 50 years you have shared your worlds and your cultures with me, and tonight I want to share something special with all of you." The audience fell completely silent as Diana prepared to sing the songs that had made her famous across the galaxy. Diana Martinez stood behind the heavy red curtains and listened to the sounds coming from the concert hall. The massive ship called Harmony of Stars carried thousands of beings from different worlds, and the noise they made was unlike anything on Earth. Crystalline creatures chimed like bells when they moved, while gas-like beings whispered in voices that sounded like wind through caves. Metal beings clicked and hummed with electronic sounds that reminded Diana of old computer music from her childhood. She pressed her wrinkled hands against the curtain fabric and felt the vibrations traveling through the ship's hull. At 67 years old, Diana had performed on hundreds of worlds and in front of millions of alien beings, but tonight felt different. Tonight was her last performance ever, and she wanted it to be perfect. Lisa Sullivan appeared beside her carrying a glass of water and a small device that would help Diana's voice carry through the hall sound system. Lisa was young with bright eyes and the kind of energy that reminded Diana of herself 50 years ago when she first started singing for alien audiences. "The hall is completely full," Lisa said with excitement in her voice. "Captain Sullivan says, we have representatives from 43 different species out there tonight. Some of them traveled for months just to hear you sing." Diana took the water and sipped it slowly. Her throat felt dry, but she knew it would be fine once she started singing. She'd been performing for so long that her body knew what to do, even when her mind felt nervous. "Are the Zephyrians here?" Diana asked. The crystal beings were some of her favorite audience members because they glowed different colors when music moved them. Their light shows during her concerts had become famous. "Across the galaxy, front row center just like you requested," Lisa smiled. "The nebuloids have taken their special section where the air pressure is different, and the Titanics are in the reinforced seats on the left side. Everyone is here, Diana. Everyone came to say goodbye." The word goodbye made Diana's chest feel tight. She had been singing professionally for over 50 years, and most of that time had been spent traveling between worlds and meeting new species. Music had become the bridge between humanity and the rest of the galaxy, and somehow she had become one of the most important parts of that bridge. Captain Jake Sullivan walked over to them. He was Lisa's father and had been commanding ships in deep space for 20 years. His uniform was crisp and his expression was serious, but Diana could see kindness in his eyes. "Ms. Martinez, the control room is ready to begin whenever you are," he said. "We've cleared all ship announcements for the next 3 hours and the engines are running as quietly as possible. The whole ship is yours tonight." Diana nodded and handed the empty water glass back to Lisa. She walked to the small mirror that had been set up backstage and looked at herself one more time. Her hair was silver now, and her face showed lines from decades of smiling and singing, but her eyes still held the same fire that had driven her to leave Earth and share human music with the galaxy. Behind her, she could hear Pete Johnson talking to the sound technicians. Pete had been her manager for 30 years and had helped her book performances on worlds that most humans had never even heard of. He was nervous tonight and kept checking his electronic tablet that controlled the sound mixing equipment. "Diana, the levels look good and all the translation devices are working properly," Pete called out. "Every being in that audience will be able to understand your words no matter what language they speak naturally." The translation technology still amazed Diana even after all these years. When she sang, the words came out in her natural English, but each listener heard them in their own language or felt them as emotional vibrations if they communicated through feelings instead of words. Dr. Alan Foster appeared from the audience area carrying a small device covered in blinking lights. He was a scientist who studied how human music affected different alien species, and he had been following Diana's career for years to document the reactions of various beings to human emotional expression. "The preliminary readings are fascinating," he said with excitement. "The Zephyrians are already showing harmonic resonance patterns and we haven't even started yet. The anticipation in the audience is creating energy fields that my instruments have never detected before." Diana found this interesting but not surprising. She had learned long ago that human music did something special to alien minds and bodies. Scientists like Dr. Foster spent their careers trying to understand what happened, but Diana just knew that when she sang, something magical occurred between her and her listeners. Maria Rodriguez, the ship's security chief, walked quickly toward them. Her expression was focused and she carried herself like someone who was always ready for trouble. She stopped next to Captain Sullivan and spoke in a low voice, but Diana could hear some of what she said. "Long-range sensors are picking up movement in the outer system," Maria said. "Nothing definite yet, but I wanted you to know we're keeping watch." Captain Sullivan nodded and looked at Diana. "Nothing to worry about, Ms. Martinez. We're in well-traveled space and the ship has excellent defenses. Tonight is about your music and nothing else." Diana appreciated his confidence, but she had spent enough time in space to know that danger could come from anywhere. Still, she had made her decision to perform tonight, and nothing would stop her from giving her audience the farewell concert they deserved. The sound of the audience grew louder as more beings found their seats. Diana could hear the musical tones that different species made when they were excited or happy. It sounded like a symphony warming up before a great performance. Lisa touched Diana's shoulder gently. "It's time," she said. "Are you ready, Diana?" Looked out at the curtain one more time and thought about all the world she had visited and all the friends she had made among the stars. She thought about the young girl from Colorado who had dreamed of singing for the whole universe and somehow made that dream come true. "I'm ready," Diana said, and her voice was strong and clear. She walked toward the curtain as the lights in the audience dimmed and the first notes of her opening song began to play through the ship's sound system. The curtains opened, and Diana stepped into the light to face her audience for the last time.